Hey there, welcome to episode 68 of Social Business Engine, the podcast that showcases thought leaders in modern business getting results through social media. I'm your host, Bernie Borges of Find and Convert. I recorded this episode on location at LinkedIn in San Francisco, where I sat down with Jason Miller. Jason is Senior Manager, Global Content Marketing at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, and also the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Welcome to the Funnel. Jason is also a rock and roll photographer. And now, here's my conversation with Jason Miller on location at LinkedIn in San Francisco. Well, Jason, welcome to the Social Business Engine podcast.
Bernie, thanks for having me again. I remember I was on this show about a year ago. Has it been that long?
Yeah. And actually, thank you for having me here physically at LinkedIn's offices in San Francisco.
Yes, this is. We're on the beautiful 20th floor here. I walk to work every morning. It's a beautiful thing here.
Wow, that is outstanding. All right. Well, why don't we begin with what do you do here at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions?
So I lead global content marketing efforts and social media efforts for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions specifically. So I have a small team, and we basically tell the story of the marketer on LinkedIn, specifically the content marketer, but now we're moving towards the B2B marketer and this full funnel marketing approach that we offer.
Okay.
But we also, LinkedIn does work for B2C as well, so I don't want to pigeonhole us there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. So, how long has LinkedIn Marketing Solutions actually existed at LinkedIn?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly when LinkedIn Marketing Solutions came about, but I've been here for 2 years, and I can tell you when I came on board, there was a small team here, and I started with the same day Deanna Lazzaroni, who was on my team, who just left recently. And we built up a content team that over the past couple of years kind of reinvigorated the blog, came up with a couple of big rocks to tell the story, and basically built a content engine to fuel our social and demand gen efforts. Very much similar to what I did at Marketo. I just kind of pulled that strategy, what I learned over there, and plugged it in over here. And it worked really well because we market to marketers.
Right. One of the things that I know you're big on, Jason, is not being boring in B2B marketing. And exactly. I know that you touch on that a lot. And you actually talk about that in your book, Welcome to the Funnel. And I'm physically holding a copy of it right in my hands right now, which I know you can't see in a podcast. But by the way, Jason, I have a question for you. Will you sign this while I'm here?
Absolutely, Bernie, for sure. That might devalue it, though, when you go to resell it.
Oh, I don't think so. Well, I'm not planning to resell it. But
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
You talk a lot about in your book and in everything that you do as a professional, as a B2B content marketing professional, you talk about not being boring. You want to give a little the kind of the backstory on that?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my background is not in B2B marketing. It's in the music industry. So I worked at Sony Music for 12 years. So it was the only job I ever had out of college. And, I'm kind of an entertainer. I like the music business. I like to turn people on to new music. So when the music business was sort of crumbling in on itself, I felt like they fought digital for way too long. By the time they decided to embrace it, the genie was out of the bottle. So I quit the industry, and I figured out this social media thing. I'm like, I can blog and social media. It's kind of fun. It's a new way to turn people on to music, right? And so I kind of embraced that, and I ended up working at a startup called Market Tools, and it was a B2B company that sold subscription software for surveys, which it was like a competitor to SurveyMonkey. It was not the most exciting thing in the world, but I had to figure out how to take this seemingly boring product and make it fun. And when I found out that you could do top-of-funnel content in the B2B space, and it could be inspiring, educational, and sometimes entertaining, I thought, entertaining? At the top of the funnel, I can do that and make fun content, get people to engage with us, get people to like us. So I started kind of experimenting with doing the exact opposite of whatever other people were doing in the B2B space. And I brought that mentality over to Marketo and had a really good run with it, with a bigger audience, a bigger voice, a little bit more budget, a little bit more room to kind of experiment with content. And it worked out really well for us.
Okay. Well, I noticed that when I read your book, Welcome to the Funnel, and I'm going to read the subtitle for those that may not be familiar with it, Jason. Proven tactics to turn your social and content marketing up to 11. I love that.
Thank you.
Because I've seen you speak several times, and again, we recorded a podcast together about a year ago, so I know who you are professionally, and I've gotten to know you a little bit. It seemed like everything in your book is really what you're doing here at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions.
Exactly. So the reason I wrote the book is because I felt like there was a lot of books on the content of the why of content, but there wasn't a how. How do you actually put this into place? So everything I did over at Marketo, I think that's why I found success so quickly. Was if I had a problem as a marketer, I would research the hell out of it, and then I would document it on the Marketo blog. And I would try to decomplicate it as much as possible, like taking these enormously complex problems, simplifying them, and then using a fun kind of rock and roll analogy to tell the story. So I was infusing my personality in the problem solving, but I was just doing this just to be doing it, just to be creating content.
Right.
And it seemed to catch on, it seemed to work, and people really liked how I told these stories. So I basically took everything I know, everything I did, and wrote it in very short, punchy chapters and rolled it up into one book. And we had a lot of fun putting it together.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of fun reading it. And I actually want to point out 2 chapters because we've only got a limited amount of time in this podcast recording. So there's 2 chapters I actually want to talk about.
Okay.
And one is chapter 12, and that is titled, Why You Should Give Your B2B Campaign to a B2C Agency. And before we talk about that, Jason, I've got a little bit of a rub with that because I run a B2B agency. So, all right, but all kidding aside, what is up with, giving a B2B campaign to a B2C agency?
I think I was speaking figuratively and not literally in this case, to where when I was coming up, when I was tasked with coming up with campaigns, B2B campaigns, I really didn't understand B2B marketing. So what I did understand was marketing to the B2C audience, right? Having a little bit of fun with our marketing, getting a little bit more emotional with the ties and our campaigns. So what I meant by that was taking a B2C approach to B2B marketing, kind of flipping it on its head. And I also call it the George Costanza approach to content marketing, where you do the exact opposite. So if every instinct you have is wrong, then the exact opposite must be right. And what I mean by that is, I think when I started in the B2B space, a lot of B2B companies were just talking about themselves in social. They were using social to broadcast. They were writing content that was very instructional about themselves. And so if you take the exact opposite of that approach, then that would be to write not about yourself, to write strategically, write helping, or content that helps. And I think that's kind of what I was talking about. That was the whole point of that statement. And the idea again is to try to connect more emotionally and try to have a little bit of fun with your B2B content.
Okay, you use the word. I was actually going to go there, and that's emotional.
Yeah,
you use that word, Jason, and I'm with you 100% on that. I think that all buyers, even if you're buying $1 million system and you're part of a big buying committee, they're making at some level an emotional decision. They've got to connect with the people at the vendor that they're talking to. So from a content standpoint and content strategy standpoint, I totally agree. You've got to really, like you say, flip it on its head and produce content that appeals emotionally, connects with the people that are on the buying side.
Exactly.
And of course, in today's day and age, that's just so digitally dominated and social media dominated. Buyers that are out there, they're doing all the research, with Dr. Google, right?
Yeah.
So you want your content to be found, discoverable, and then it needs to make that emotional connection.
Yeah, and Bernie, to add on to that, I really specialize. I understand the entire funnel, but I really specialize in top of the funnel content. And when I was at Marketo, John Miller, who I reported to, no relation, he'll be the first to tell you that, not me, but John told me, he goes, there's one metric I want you to focus on that's not really easily measured. He goes, just get people to like us. And there's a movie called Almost Famous. Do you know this movie, Almost Famous?
I don't know.
It's a movie, a Cameron Crowe movie about this kid journalist who goes on tour with a rock band, and he's writing an article for Rolling Stone. And so he asks, so he goes on tour with the band, sees all kinds of crazy stuff, and the guitar player from the band says, you're not going to write about all these things you see on tour. And the journalist says back to him and says, I will quote you warmly and accurately. And the guitar player, Russell, from the band, looks at the kid and says, just make us look cool, man. And I think that sticks in my head because when John said, I want people to like us, he doesn't want people to click the like button. He wants people to like the brand.
Right.
And I think top of the funnel content can really just make your brand look cool if you do it right.
Right. Right. That's well said. That's
Thank
well
you.
said. Yeah, but that is difficult to measure, isn't it?
It's very difficult to measure. I mean, is it NPS score? Is it engagement with your content? Is it just, I have a folder in my Outlook called Nice Notes. And whenever I get a nice LinkedIn email or a note that somebody says, hey, really enjoyed your session or your content, I put it in there. And when I'm having a bad day, I look at it. But I also kind of keep track of, that's how I think you can really measure just the feel-good effect of your content by nice notes.
You remind me of a client who, where the VP of marketing was told by the CEO, Jim, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Because when I'm on the road, everybody keeps saying that they find us everywhere online and they really like what we're doing. And it's the whole likability thing and discoverability thing and the brand awareness thing that can't be put on any kind of a report or a spreadsheet or anything. But that feedback coming from the CEO to the VP of marketing is job security.
Yeah, and I think you well know this, Bernie, that getting out there and just networking and chatting with people at the conferences, I mean, you have to have a pulse on it. And the only way to get a pulse on your company, your content, and you as a person, you as a marketer, is to get out there and chat with other folks and see what's going on.
Yep. Okay, I also want to talk about Chapter 13, and that's building a content marketing A-team. I've talked in the past, both here on the Social Business Engine podcast and also on my blog at Find and Convert, about how do you build a digital marketing team, the skills needed for digital marketing. But this is a little bit different. This is specifically content marketing.
Yeah.
So what's that A-team look like?
Well, it's based on just my experience. This is my experience, and I found that it works pretty much universally because I've shared it with some other folks and got really great feedback. But what it means is as a content marketer at Marketo, I started off and I was running the blog, I was running the social channels, I was creating content all by myself, and it was getting very difficult to keep up with this. One blog post a day, I was up till 2 a.m. trying to get a blog post. And when I came to LinkedIn, it was just me and another person doing the content here. So we built that out substantially since then. But you need some help. And what does that help look like? Well, I think you need an agency. Certainly need an agency for concept and creative, and for data interpretation, some research. Then you also need some good writers. So you need some writer for everyday content. You need some writers to up-level it for maybe some guest posts outside of your business or outside of your initial circle. And then I think you need the SEO element to that. And then that is what the A-team looks like. And you pair that up with, aligned perfectly with your demand gen team, your PR, and community, right? So there's another chapter that kind of complements that called Why You Should Organize Your Team to Be Like KISS, the band. And that comes from the fact that I was watching KISS, and I thought, how cool is this? There's 4 members on stage, each with their own unique individual role, but they're playing together seamlessly to deliver this amazing experience, which is a song. And I think if you can get that dream team together and they're all firing, they're all working together, communicating, I feel like the bigger the company, the bigger the barriers, the bigger the silos. But if you break down those silos and get these people communicating, that's how you deliver this marketing experience that we're all trying to do now. And then align that with your PR team and your community. I think you got a home run. Okay.
I like it. My mind goes to a topic that I just can't seem to get away from these days, and that's the role of the employee. The whole employee advocacy thing, which we're talking a lot about here on my podcast. So what role does the employee team play on your content marketing team?
Well, I think the most important thing is to empower these folks to share your own good content, right? Not necessarily sale. You don't want them sharing demo offers or whatnot. But the question comes up so frequently that, my content's not getting shared, my content's not getting any engagement. And I think you have to look inward. Like, are your employees, who I hope are happy employees and they're excited to be working at your company, have you empowered them to share your own good content? And this is where the employee advocacy platforms come in. So LinkedIn has a platform called Leap, which empowers folks to do that and measure it. But more importantly, it's I think that some employees might be a little bit scared because they might not know what to share, what they can share. So I think it's important to go through some training and say, we want you to be advocating. Here's the content we want you to share. We would like you to share. Put your own voice behind it. And that goes into the culture of content, creating the culture of content, and actually blogging and publishing long-form content with your best insights from your best employees. But again, I think look at your employees and are they sharing your own good content with their networks? I think it's a good place to start, and it's only going to become more and more important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm not going to go any further on that because we've got other podcast episodes that are just devoted to that topic and doing a little bit of a deeper dive. Okay, you mentioned earlier, Jason, the blog, and you mentioned that in the context of the LinkedIn blog. And I have to say that there are a lot of people that I know who are not even aware that LinkedIn has a blog. So talk a little bit about like the role of the blog and how you're promoting it and kind of getting it out there.
So, great question, Bernie. I think the blog is certainly not the sexiest piece of social media, but I think it's the most important. The LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog, when I first joined a couple of years ago, it had some posts up there, some product related posts, but it didn't really have a strategy and what we use the blog in food groups. I'm sure that's in the book as well. It didn't have a good cadence moving forward, a nice mix of content that was helpful, educational, inspiring, fun, etc. And so we came in, we put together a plan. We kind of built it off of what I did at Marketo, where we also use the blog in food groups. But the blog is where you tell your story. It's a running narrative. It's not to be confused with the Resource Center, which the Resource Center is where all your content lives. It's indexed. It's searchable. It's essential. But the blog is a running narrative. It's where you tell your story. It's flowing in one direction. It's got comments. It's got likes. It's got shares. It's living. It's breathing. It's indexed. And we came up with a cadence of blogs to tell our story there. Now, you don't want to put up a bunch of sales type blog post, but you want to be very conversational. One blog is one idea, and then map that out to the strategy and the story we're trying to tell. The story was, of course, the story of the marketer on LinkedIn, which moved to the story of the content marketer on LinkedIn, and now we're evolving to the story of the B2B marketer and this full funnel marketing approach. But there are also some stories around B2C folks using LinkedIn. So we kind of mixed that up and put together a strategy, mapped it to our big rock pieces of content, and that's where we're at now.
Okay. Well, I enjoy the blog. I sometimes forget that it's there because when I go to LinkedIn, I'm distracted by all the things that I can do on LinkedIn, namely posting status updates, looking at other people's updates, etc. And then what about publishing to LinkedIn individually?
Sure. So there's a huge opportunity to publish long-form content on LinkedIn, and it attaches to your profile. So the way that I see it best being utilized by companies and individuals is companies can't publish long-form content yet, but their employees can, right? So there's a really great opportunity for a thought leadership play here. And I always talk about thought leaders versus thought leadership. And I say I like to think that the world has enough thought leaders, but not enough thought leadership. So, and the question always comes up, well, what if this one employee starts becoming this thought leader in this space and they leave the company? Well, you can't think of it like that. You can't.
They might leave the company anyway.
Exactly, and you can't what's the word I'm looking for? You can't tell them not to share their own insights. I mean, it's only in your best interest. But if that person does leave your company and you do embrace this culture of thought leadership from tapping the insights of your best employees, then it leaves this hole open or an opportunity for somebody to step into that role. It's a much more attractive role than if you didn't have that in place. But I'm seeing employees, individuals, CMOs, C-suites share their thoughts by publishing on LinkedIn. When you publish there, it goes into the network. It's shared with your network. The comments are all online there, and it's attached to your profile. So it's just boosting your online identity. And there's a chance if you get some good traction on that, and it's a nice, relevant piece, it could potentially get picked up by Pulse. If it gets picked up by Pulse... And
you want to explain what Pulse is for those that don't know?
Pulse is the news aggregator on LinkedIn. So it's basically pulls together all the articles from companies you're subscribed to, thought leaders you're following, the influencer program that you might be following, but other other updates from your network, and it pulls them all into one aggregated piece. So, for example, every single morning I wake up, I log into LinkedIn, and I see the most important articles and news that's happening in my industry from my network, and it's almost like a real-time newspaper. So that's what Pulse does.
Right.
And there's also a great Pulse app where you can subscribe different blogs, and so I have a full customized. When Google killed their reader, I had nothing, man, because I had all my blogs subscribed in there and different channels, and so Pulse, you can do the same thing with Pulse now, and then integrate that with your.
And as the content aggregation in Pulse, so when I write an article that I publish on LinkedIn, are the chances of it being picked up based on an algorithm, or is it human?
It's based on an algorithm. And I can't tell you, if your post does get picked up in Pulse, you can go from 500 views to several thousand in a matter of hours or overnight. So it's incredibly powerful. It's a great place for additional reach for your content, and just to get your voice out there. And again, remember, like a blog is one idea. I think people overcomplicate blogs all the time. It's one idea. It's one thought. It's conversational. There's room for error. Right, because it's social media, it's very forgiving.
Right.
So I think if you have something to say and you have something important, or you have a comment on something, and you're not publishing it to LinkedIn, I think you're just missing opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. So just to be clear, though, Jason, because this is actually a question that I have, and that is the publishing feature for me as a user, as an individual, that is part of LinkedIn Content Marketing Solutions?
I wouldn't say it's part of the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions suite. I'm probably not the best person to ask that. I mean, the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions suite of products, our core product is LinkedIn Lead Accelerator, which is the product that was Bizzo integrated into the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions suite.
Okay.
Sponsored updates at the core, SlideShare, LinkedIn Groups. That kind of comes up with the entire core of the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions suite of product offerings. The Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to LinkedIn is probably a better resource, which we published earlier this year.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about SlideShare, one of my favorite B2B channels.
Okay.
Because I wish we had an hour just to talk about SlideShare. So give us kind of the Reader's Digest version. I still say that, by the way. I know it ages me a little bit. What's best practices? How are companies using SlideShare really, really effectively?
So there's a couple of different ways that I think that that companies can best utilize SlideShare. I think it's a huge missed opportunity for both B2C and B2B marketers. And I think that a lot of companies just kind of dismiss it as, I'm going to upload my WebEx slides to it and then be done with it. When it's so much more than that. I look at it as a platform for visual content thought leadership, if you will. So I see companies, I see businesses, and even individuals taking the content they have in place and repurposing it into a visual self-guided journey into SlideShare. So taking that ebook and just optimizing it for SlideShare. There's a whole new audience there, and they're searching in SlideShare for content. And there's a whole back-end analytics tool with SlideShare. You can see how your content's performing. You can see the internal link backs. It's embeddable, so now you can take that content and embed it in your blog. It renders beautifully in Twitter, in the LinkedIn feed, on landing pages. So you can add multimedia interactivity across all of your campaigns by just uploading it to SlideShare. SlideShare now supports video. It supports infographics, so you can take your infographic, put it on SlideShare, embed it across all these different...
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The video support is limited to a YouTube embed, right?
That I don't know.
Okay. I think the answer is yes. Now, of course, today's a new day. Maybe it changed since last I used it, but that's my understanding. It's okay. Subject to potentially change on that, right?
Yeah, I probably should know that, but I know that we have videos hosted on SlideShare, and we use them for all of our videos. So
something that we've just started experimenting with is we convert in addition to publishing each one of these podcast episodes up on iTunes and Stitcher, and then we have our show notes page where they're embedded there as well through the Libsyn embed. We're also converting it into the right format that can be uploaded into YouTube. So we're going to take your picture and the main picture that you supply for this podcast episode, Jason, and that will go up on YouTube.
I saw you do that just the other day. What was your last one you did?
Ian Cleary, maybe?
Yes, with Ian Cleary.
Yeah. So we started doing that now about 10 episodes ago. So now the next step is to create a slide share, and it doesn't have to be long, right? It could be 1 or 2 slides that just kind of give the main points of that episode and then embed that YouTube right into the slide share.
Exactly.
And it's just another way to potentially distribute content. To your point about there's a whole audience there that you may not be reaching otherwise.
Exactly. I mean, and we, as we well know, the audience is in control of where they consume their content and how they consume their content and through which channels. So it's important to have your content everywhere and available easily and optimized for each one of those channels.
Okay. So let's go back to something we actually discussed earlier. And that is, we were talking about how at Marketo you were asked to create a result that's difficult to measure. But let's talk about measurement and different ways that brands and individuals can measure results through the content that they produce through LinkedIn Content Marketing Solutions. So you want to kind of run through kind of a checklist of different ways that you can measure?
Yeah, of course. So, LinkedIn enables B2B marketers to reach the right professional audience with accuracy and reliability. And this is because our targeting is based off of the world's most complete set of up-to-date first-party data that's based on members' professional profiles. And what sets our targeting apart is that, while other channels often use data sources that provide an incomplete or only partially accurate view of the audience, they might have data that contains only some professional facets or facets that the members update infrequently. LinkedIn members, by contrast, regularly provide data about their professional profiles, and they keep this information current because LinkedIn is the professional profile record for our 364 million members. For example, only LinkedIn reliably helps marketers reach professionals according to their job function, title, seniority, company name, company size, skills, geolocation, field of study, and industry. This gives B2B marketers the ability to target with precision.
So, Jason, before we segue to my one thing question, what advice do you want to give a marketer who has not really looked at all the possibilities that's available to him or her in content marketing using LinkedIn Content Marketing Solutions? So
I think the most important thing is to look at your plan. Look at your marketing plan. Is LinkedIn a part of that plan? If it's not, then again, I think you're simply missing opportunities. Start with the company page.
B2B or B2C.
B2B or B2C. We have great case studies on both, and I see so many inspiring examples of both B2C and B2B telling their story and sharing remarkable content on LinkedIn.
And I'm going to put in a plug for your blog, the LinkedIn blog on that, because there's some great stories on the blog.
We post everything. I mean, from LinkedIn tips and tricks to case studies to just some stories, some thought leadership conversations with some thought leaders in the industry. But we try to keep a nice mix of really good relevant content that's focused on LinkedIn's approach to content marketing, but also the greater topics and trends of what's happening in both B2B and B2C space as it relates to LinkedIn and how you can get the most value out of LinkedIn. But I would recommend anyone who doesn't have a company page presence to start there, and then just start posting content, building that following, and then find out what's resonating, and then you can actually turn on a sponsored update and kind of break through your initial reach. So there's an element of inbound marketing there where you're posting to your content to your page, you're reaching your followers, but you can target them with the content through your company page, sponsored updates, and track those results. And with the targeting options, if you understand your audience and you know who you're going after, there's really no miss. And that with that comes find out what you're comfortable paying per lead, and you can track that back as well.
Well, I agree with you. It's a missed opportunity for those that are not currently leveraging all what that's available to them on LinkedIn marketing.
And so for advanced marketers, if you're taking a step further, so you have that foundation on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Lead Accelerator was our newest solution, which actually allows you to now track anonymous users and do different nurture streams to them using display and social advertising. So it's really interesting. I think it's 95% of visitors to your website bounce without giving you information. So how do you stay in touch with those folks? Well, now you have the option to nurture them using both display. A combination of display and social advertising, which is sponsored updates, promoted tweets, et cetera. And then the LinkedIn Lead Accelerator is also a full funnel solution. So we have InMail, and then we have the analytics to kind of keep that whole. You can measure all the way throughout the funnel. Is
InMail part of your content marketing solutions
Yes,
repertoire?
It is.
Okay. We're going to have another podcast episode because we're running out of time here.
InMail is really exciting now because there's a 100% deliverability rate on InMail. So that means that it's only delivered to the person when they're online.
Right. Yeah. Outstanding. All right, Jason. Well, we do need to segue.
Okay.
And this is where I ask you my one thing question. And that is, if there's any one thing that you could change about the way that business is conducted today, what would that be, other than everybody reading your book? That's a given.
I think I would like to see more businesses take risks with their marketing. I think if you play it safe, I think you tend to be sort of boring. I like to get people to think about content marketing a little bit differently. I like to get them to think about doing something that's not in their norm, like taking, we call it intelligent risk here at LinkedIn. But
intelligent risk?
An intelligent risk.
Okay.
I think it's about doing something a little bit different, taking a risk, using, I think we're in a space where we can actually use data to better inform decisions. But then there's an element of creativity, I think, that comes on top of that. Mm-hmm. So using data to better inform decisions, but also thinking more creatively about how you approach these things and getting a little more risky and taking that intelligent risk beyond what you're comfortable doing.
All right, Jason, that's awesome. Risk taking on your content. I totally agree with you. I think every brand should do some of that. And we kind of preach that to our clients, but not all are willing to take that risk, but we're going to preach it anyway. So, Jason, we are at the wrap-up stage here, so let's let everyone know where they can connect with you online, learn a little bit more about this little old book here. Welcome to the funnel.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at JasonMillerCA. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just put a little note in the message that said where you heard about this at.
Like this podcast?
Yeah. LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog is where we post most of our content, and it's the best way to stay up on the top news and trends and topics around LinkedIn.
Outstanding. Jason Miller, thank you so much for being here today on the Social Business Engine podcast.
And Bernie, thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jason Miller from LinkedIn. I sure did. Hey, as always, be sure to visit our show notes page for links to the resources that were mentioned on this podcast. Just go to socialbusinessengine.com/podcasts. And while you're there, please consider writing a review of our podcast in iTunes. We have a page that's set up at socialbusinessengine.com/iTunes with a link directly to this podcast where you can write a review. And stay tuned for an exciting new social business journal coming soon that we are publishing in cooperation with a large enterprise brand that you know and probably love. Just visit socialbusinessengine.com to learn more about it. Well, that's a wrap for this episode. This is Bernie Borges of Find and Convert, wishing you continued success on your social business journey.